A good Monday, everybody. I'm meteorologist Dery alongside meteorologist Courtney Aitken. We're here to talk about weather for the next 15 minutes. And of course, topic number one is the heat. It is going to be pretty sultry out there all week long.
Yeah, we're playing literally the game of how many different ways can you say it's going to be hot out. You open thesaurus and you put in heat, and that's basically your forecast for the week.
So when I used to work in Seattle, like 10 years ago, something like that, it was always rain. Like, how many different ways could you say it's rain? Did you have that when you were working down in Texas? Like, how many different ways to say heat?
How many? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's during this time of year too, where it's like, it's actually more June. I would say June is just like,
That's a tough month.
How many different ways can you say it? And then in the spring, what's even harder, in my opinion, is it's like, how many different ways can you say like a conditional chance of a storm before people are just absolutely sick of you? Because it's one of those things where it's like, if it happens, it's going to be a big deal. But if it doesn't happen, people are like,
what happened?
And?
Yeah. Well, you see that through other parts of the country too, especially like the Southeast during the spring months. It's like there's a chance for rain every single day.
Yep.
And some places like Florida, it's like clockwork. It gets hot and then
every single day.
You get a storm at about noon and then it clears out by 2 o'clock and it's nice the rest of the day. So that would be a challenging environment unless you had an audience that was, they had an idea of, okay, this is always going to be a chance.
Or like the chasers are like, okay, like they're locked in on it, but everybody else is like, yeah. I feel like Colorado is kind of similar too, because you have like a daily chance during the summer of a thunderstorm over the mountains.
Sure,
I'm sure parts of Washington are similar to that too.
Yep, you
where
get
it's
that
like,
elevated.
Yeah, you want to tell people, like, if you're hiking today, try to make it down by noon or 1 because there could be these storms. And people are like, but there wasn't yesterday.
Yeah.
So
conditional threat.
Conditional.
Today is not conditional. It's just going to be sultry hot outside. So let's take a look at the impacts of today and really the heat that we will be dealing with all week long. It has the potential to be dangerous because it's kind of twofold. The first off, we have hot temperatures during the day. We've got daytime highs that are easily working their way into the 90s. I believe the warmest we've been so far this year is 92 degrees. We're easily going to be warmer than that pretty much every day. And the feels like temperature with the heat combined with the humidity, it's going to make it feel like it's near 100 degrees basically every day. You're talking between about noon and 6, even 7 o'clock in the evening. That's how hot it's going to feel. So that's the first part of it. The second part is the overnight lows. The temperatures at night are not going to drop much lower than the mid-70s, especially within the metro core, where you have that urban heat island effect, where things like buildings and roads, all that stuff, it absorbs the heat all day long, and then it just releases it at night, and it keeps that temperature just steamy. So areas that don't have air conditioning are just not going to be able to cool down. That's also a dangerous part of this as well.
Yeah, it's really difficult for those who don't have reliable AC because you're not getting relief even at night. So you certainly don't want your windows open. But we were talking, just kind of chatting during the sunrise show about this time of year, if you don't have your AC on in the morning, which I often don't, it's like you lose it. You have to get ahead of it. Otherwise, your place will be cooking by the afternoon.
Yeah, and your air conditioner will be working overtime.
Right.
So we have that extreme heat warning. It's basically for most of Minnesota. We just didn't quite reach the threshold across southern Minnesota. The orange counties, that is a heat advisory, still heat index close to 100 degrees. And both of these go in effect every day until Thursday. Because beyond that point, we'll start to see some cooling, but I think it's just so far out that the Weather Service just hasn't added a day onto it. Really, it probably will be this hot at least through Friday, with any kind of subtle cooling expected by next weekend. And I want to emphasize it'll be a subtle cooling as well. We drop from like the mid 90s to near 90 for highs. We also have a red flag warning. That's a elevated risk for spreading wildfires in north central and northeastern Minnesota. This does include the Boundary Waters area from 11 a.m. until 10 p.m. today. It is gusty, and even with dew points in the 60s, we still have, with that extreme heat, low relative humidity, and any wildfire that gets going can spread easily, and it looks like we might be dealing with this for a couple of days in a row as well.
I think so, yeah. I mean, looking at just model runs of what winds could be in the coming days, it looks a lot like today. So I wouldn't be surprised if this is extended or if they, at the very least, put out a fire weather watch into the rest of the week. So that's something to take seriously for sure.
That's right. These are high temperatures today. These are actual temperatures, so this does not include the dew point. And one thing that's interesting is you notice, hey, this doesn't happen very often. Why is it cooler across southern Minnesota versus warmer up north? Why is it 10 degrees warmer in International Falls today than, say, in Rochester? You got an answer for that?
I mean, I think it has to do with where the high is,
That's right. Yeah, for sure. I think it's that position of that big upper level ridge is just to our south, and that clockwise flow around that high is kind of spinning that heat further north. And you can see too, even through downtown Duluth, which is usually cooler by the lake, not necessarily today. We have a strong southwesterly wind that's going to eliminate any kind of lake breeze. So it might actually be hotter near the lake versus up on top of the hill. And this is basically going to be a rinse and repeat forecast all week long. Daytime highs here in the Twin Cities in the mid 90s with the heat index topping near 100 degrees. So that's the kind of heat where you do want to pay attention to. It is potentially dangerous, especially if you're working hard outside, if you're training for any kind of event. Sporting events, just be mindful of that. Coaches, add in extra water breaks and things like that, because I think the worst of the heat is, again, between 1, 2 o'clock in the afternoon through about 6 o'clock in the evening. So notice, even at 6 o'clock, the heat index is still close to 100 degrees. Yeah,
I mean, I was out over the weekend just kind of sitting outside, and I have a cutoff for myself for sunscreen where I'm like, okay, if it's after 5, I'm okay without it.
Yeah.
But I was pretty concerned. I was sitting out. It was between 5 and 6 on Saturday.
Yeah.
It was hot. The sun was right overhead. Just like sweating so bad. It was terrible. But it felt like I was just frying. So even during those times of the day that I associate with temperatures cooling off, you're not going to have that in the next few days. And like you were saying earlier, the heat warning is set to expire Thursday evening, but you get into this gray area because we have similar temperatures into Friday, even into Saturday. What we're looking for is for that certainly high temperatures, but that high pressure ridge to break down. And if we can get that to break down a little bit, then we will slowly start to cool off, and maybe we'll even see some chances for showers and storms over the weekend. Note that it is a small chance at this time.
Would you call it conditional?
I would call it conditional. I was literally about to say that. It's conditional on when that system kind of rolls through, because models are not in agreement on when that travels our way and how much and when we break up that high pressure ridge. So that's why the forecast beyond Thursday is a little bit tricky.
A lot of folks are already watering their lawns, and they realize that, this is a pretty standard heat wave in July. We get heat like this. It's not super extreme, even though the word extreme heat warning is there. We see this kind of heat every summer, so it's nothing that's too crazy. However, it does stick around long enough where you go, okay, let's start to see some changes, right?
Yeah.
And we don't see anything significant happening until the end of next weekend, where we get into more of a progressive flow pattern. That high pressure ridge that Courtney mentioned begins to slip to our south and west, and we get into this pattern where we should see, in theory, more numerous rain chances. And we want to show you what's happening in the mid-levels of the atmosphere. There's that ridge. So it's basically right on top of us, if not just to our south and west. And it's not going to move very much over the next couple of days. But watch what happens as we head into the end of the week, and especially next weekend. That ridge begins to move further west. And that gives us into more of a kind of a west-northwesterly flow pattern. So it usually doesn't mean lots of heavy rain, but it does mean chances for quick hitting showers and thunderstorms, because we get into that kind of Alberta Clipper type pattern where we get those systems moving in. They're here, they're gone. They tend to not bring widespread heavy rain, but at least it changes the pattern up, and it should, in theory, give us some slightly cooler temperatures as well.
Or at the very least, more cloud cover as you get those systems passing through. They're quick moving, they're not incredibly impactful, but at least it gets a little bit more active, it gets a little bit more interesting, rather than just the daily heat, which we do have all the way through the end of the work week.
Yeah, so we'll play the game this week. Can you tell the difference between 95 and 93 degrees? My guess is probably
I feel like you probably can, and that's the thing. thing is people, I think they see triple digits and they tend to kind of freak out, like the same way people see the word tornado and they freak out.
Yep.
But it's whether it feels like 98 or 100 today, it's going to feel bad either way.
One thing that is notable, though, is when we wrapped up June, we had that really hot day, and it was like the heat index in the Twin Cities, I think, peaked at 108. That was obscene. I remember being outside and going, how can anybody last at this kind of heat? Talking to everybody that lives in Florida, basically.
Sure, yeah.
But the dew point, it's still noticeable. I mean, we still have muggy dew points in the mid 60s to near 70 degrees, so it still is pretty humid outside, but we're not looking at those tropical levels of moisture that we saw that previous heat wave.
That is true. Yeah, the dew points were really skyrocketing, like into the 70s, right?
Yeah,
day.
upper 7. I think it peaked at 78 or 79 degrees. So
that's just gross.
Ridiculous heat and humidity. So it's going to be hot, it's going to be humid, but certainly not that humid. And that's going to play into the red flag warning as well. We still have the high fire danger up in northeast Minnesota, probably over the next couple of days. But it's not widespread because this is where we have the strongest winds gusting. I mean, we're talking winds gusting potentially 25, 30 miles per hour up there. That combined with the low humidity means any wildfire can quickly get going. So let's talk briefly about that. So elevated fire danger, northeastern Minnesota. We have at least 4 fires that are going on in the boundary waters. And it's kind of a worst case scenario where the fires, they got going, I believe it was on July 6th. It was due to lightning. So lightning sparked some wildfires in the boundary waters. They were really small, just smoldering. But then you enter this type of weather pattern where it's nothing but hot temperatures, low humidity, and gusty wind. And you're talking these fires like blowing up, and you can see them, they turn into these pyrocumulus clouds that you can see for miles. And unfortunately, we don't have a big change in our weather pattern for at least the next week or so. So that's very bad news for folks that are planning trips to the boundary waters. Campfires are already limited. I know parts of, I think it's areas along the international border are closed so that they can fight these fires. But the red flag warnings will probably continue, like you mentioned, over the next couple of days.
Yeah, probably going to be some reissuing. I certainly wouldn't be surprised. And this is something that we've known about because, like you were just saying, there have been burn bans for at least, I feel like we've heard about that for the past handful of days, but now they elected to actually issue that warning because of the wind and, of course, the very warm temperatures. They're just not any help. And you can see parts of Canada getting some rain and storms, but because of the position of our high, it just pushes everything to our north. So it pushes all of the beneficial rain out of the way. So we just can't get any of it. I mean, you'd have to pay to get even some clouds, it looks like.
Yeah.
We can't even get the cloud cover.
It's going to cost a lot. And
it's going to cost a lot.
You can see, you can kind of make out the outline of that high pressure system too, where the winds flow clockwise around it. And I think it was the start of the month, that high was to our south and east, and we were on that storm track. We were seeing numerous storm chances and severe weather as well. We're not seeing that this week. If you are a fan of the heat, well, this week is for you. This is kind of the big time summer heat that's going to be with us. It's pretty typical to see the warmest temperatures of the year about this time. Our average high is 84 degrees. It's as warm as it is all year round. We tend to see the warmest temps of the year about 2 or 3 weeks after the summer solstice, which we're now about that time and beyond. And 95 for a high temperature today. I think the record's like triple digits. So it's not record heat, but you can see even warmer temperatures further north where the hottest temperatures in the state happening in the icebox, which is International Falls. So how about that? Temperatures basically staying the same through the rest of the week. I'm not seeing any major changes, and even though we have those storm chances Saturday and Sunday, they are small chances. They're just kind of like, hey, there is an end in sight. Because we all need that. We all need a little bit of hope.
It's true. It is maybe, hope casting on my part. Like, I really want there to be a rain chance, and maybe if I want it bad enough, there will be. But it is possible. It is possible that based on the positioning of our next system way out west, it could happen. So it is something we're watching, and if anything else, there is an end in sight. I know you mentioned some of the warmest temperatures forecast for the state today are in International Falls, and they actually did hit 98 yesterday.
How about that?
And I think that if they hadn't hit 98 yesterday, I almost wouldn't have believed it, seeing it in the forecast for today, since they typically are one of the really chilly spots.
Yeah.
But because of where that high is, that's where the major heat is.
That's right.
And
so
it just keeps going.
We started the broadcast with how many times can we say it's hot outside? Well, we're going to find out because you can expect minimal changes in your forecast moving ahead. More news, more weather coming up.